approach resilience in the education system. What tools can help us? What is the European Union doing to promote resilience in the education system? Let me introduce to you our guests for today's discussion. We have Arianna Sala, Research Fellow with the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission and promoter of the European Commission's LifeComp project. We have Peter Fagerström, entrepreneur, founder, and Chief Executive Officer of Teachmillions. And we have the ETF's Olena Bekh, Senior Human Capital Expert, Coordinator for Innovative Teaching and Learning. Welcome to you, all of our guests. And welcome to you, all our listeners. Please write in the chat, let us know where you're from, and engage in the conversation. Post your questions, and our guests will be happy to answer them. So, I will start with Olena. Olena, tell us, why is there such a big focus in the education and training system on resilience? And what is the European Union doing about it?
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this discussion. I think we need to put the word resilience in the context, and let's just try to define what is resilience to start with. And in psychological research, resilience has been there for decades, I just look at some of the definitions which refer to ability to be happy, successful, or, for example, it refers to the ability to return to the shape, the usual shape after being stretched or pressed, after being put under stress. And this means that resilience is more associated in psychology with flexibility and with positive adaptation to shock, to different trauma, or also to ability to leap or bounce back, elasticity in a way. And there is a lot of different characteristics of resilience that have been used so far. But at the moment, we are looking at the situation wherein resilience started being part of the policy discourse globally and at the European level. And it is mentioned among the top 10 skills that the modern generations and the future generations should have. And even if we take an example of World Economic Forum top 10 skills, if we look at 2020 or 2015, resilience was not there yet among the 10 top skills. But for the top ranking for 2025, resilience is already on the 9th place among the 15 top skills. And it is also very prominent in the European context because of the recent policy documents adopted by the Commission and, for example, the European Skills Agenda for Sustainable Competitiveness, Social Fairness and Resilience. And it's very easy to explain this with the COVID pandemics, because this is when really most of the people across the globe needed to bounce back after being in lockdown, after being in difficult situations. But is it only because of that? I think no, because we started preparing for these huge future possible shocks well before the pandemics, because also the changes in the labor market, the digital transition, the green challenges, all the possible challenges coming from the labor market, for the labor force, for the skills required by employers, and the necessity to take our own lives in our hands, the entrepreneurial capacity, all of that was referring to ability to really live through these transitions effectively. And also we put it in a social and emotional context, because resilience would also mean being emotionally stable, being physically fit, being a positive thinker, and being part of the society, being able to collaborate with people in different communities, in different environments, and also in digital environment as we see it now. So one of the effective responses that I see from the part of the European Commission, and which was really supported by practitioners and policymakers, was the adoption in 2018 of the second edition of the Council regulation on key competences for lifelong learning, and the development of the key competence or competence frameworks at the EU level, in particular, starting from Teachcom, and then through Entrecom, and now we have the LifeComp, which was launched last year, and we have my Arianna Sala here, who could say a couple words about it.
Okay. Thank you, Olena. Before I go to Arianna to hear more about this LifeComp project, I would just ask for a word from Peter. Olena, you have set the context of resilience. It entails a lot. It's a big concept, but how can we address it in practice? Now, Peter, you are an entrepreneur. Maybe can you tell us, how important is resilience as an entrepreneur, and how you work a lot with young people, and how do you address resilience when teaching those young people?
Thank you for having us from Teachmillions here. I also run another company, EduCrafter. As an entrepreneur, we have to promote ourselves a little bit. Resilience, I think, is probably the key competence, if we can say competence. It's probably, I think Arianna will talk about this a bit more, but a group of competences or competencies that work in sync that an entrepreneur can have. There is a lot to talk about grit, which is more kind of an inner ability. And this is not, some people are born with it, but it's something we can train. So through explicit learning cycles, it is something you can actually go through and get better at. And I think the LifeComp that has been published is a great insight into which kind of competencies you need to be able to build this kind of resilience. Entrepreneurship is, of course, that setting up a business or businesses, kind of ventures, taking on financial risk in the hope of profit and or change at the end, and to do such a thing, change the world in a sense, that requires certain skills, competences, abilities, and many of those fit into this kind of frame of resilience.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for contextualizing how important resilience is for entrepreneurs, but not only for all of us facing the changes that are taking place around us. Arianna, I'm just going to make you wait just one more moment because we really want to hear about the LifeComp project, but I would just like to welcome our audience. We have many people from diverse locations. We have Monia from Tunis, Mohammed from Morocco, Dorina from Albania. We have Ferdinando from Italy, also, excuse my pronunciation, we have Riahi from Tunisia, and we have Samson from Kenya. So welcome to all of you, and please post your questions. We're happy to hear from you. Arianna, please tell us, Arianna, what is this LifeComp framework that we hear so much about, and the LifeComp project that you are promoting? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Denise, and thank you for inviting me and having me here. So LifeComp is the European framework on this personal, social, and learning to learn key competence. As Olena said, it has been published in 2020. And its objective, its goal is to create a common language and a shared understanding on what we are talking about when we refer to this personal, social, and learning to learn competence. We know very clearly that to succeed in education in our digital age and in the new normal that we are living in, it depends not only from acquiring cognitive and technical skills, but also on developing what are called normally the socio-emotional skills or soft skills or not cognitive skills. So LifeComp is relatively new, but it builds on advanced educational research on what is called socio-emotional learning. So there is an increasing amount of research on the effect of promoting in a systematic way those socio-emotional competence in education. And what do research tell us? Well, it tells us that when we intentionally try to develop those competences, there is an increase in academic success of students and a decrease of early leaving, school leaving. There is an improvement also in the student well-being and the student mental health. And we know that in this new in this post-COVID or COVID situation, taking care of mental health of students is really important. It shows also that it provoke an improvement in student behavior and a decrease in interpersonal violence and bullying. It also favors an improvement in the relationship among students and teachers, and overall an improvement in the school climate. So LifeComp specifically describes 9 competencies in 3 areas: personal, social, and learning to learn. And this competence, for example, in the personal area span from self-regulation, which is the ability to be aware of and to manage our emotion, thoughts, and behavior, to, for example, well-being, the pursuit of life satisfaction, and to be able to take care of our own physical, mental, and social health. In the social area, the competence that we described span from being able to empathize with others, to collaborating and communicating with others in a constructive and respectful way. And in the learning to learn area, it describes competence needed to approach new learning with openness and curiosity, being confident about our possibility of continuously learn and progress through work, through study, through effort, but also to be able to analyze critically the huge amount of information that we receive each day, and to manage one's own learning in a lifelong and a life-wide perspective. And we know that this capacity of keeping oneself progressing and study and learning is fundamental to be able to stay in the labor market and to flourish as individual.
Okay.
So we consider the LifeComp competencies are teachable and learnable lifelong and life-wide in an educational setting, and that including the teaching of those competencies in a systematic way could also contribute to innovation in the European education system. We use the metaphor of breathing sometimes to describe, to talk about LifeComp competencies. You know, each of us is able to breathe. It is necessary for life, no? But then in any moment of life, we can learn how to focus on our attention on breathing to reduce stress or anxiety, or to sharpen our ability to concentrate. We consider that in a similar way, the LifeComp competencies are truly human competencies, which all of us can develop and hone in a systematic way through education, through instruction, at any age, to explore and expand our potential. So we think that this will help us in improving our LifeComp competencies, will help increasing our resilience, and help us also flourishing through changes and not to just adapt to change.
Thank you, Arianna. I mean, that's a very good overview that you've given us. I mean, while you were speaking, I'm going to be a bit provocative with my next question to you also, Arianna. I mean, are we perhaps not asking too much of our young people? Are we asking them to be totally self-reliant?
I don't think it is asking too much. I think it's providing tools to pursue our full potential, to be able to grow in every aspect, personally, professionally, academically, etc. So, you know, we are trying to give some extra tools also to educational systems to help individuals and the future generation to be more confident and to be more aware of those competences. Those competences are sometimes considered some like character traits or something that is innate and somehow not modifiable. We want to defy this conception, and we want to promote the idea that all those competencies we can learn and we can improve in each time of life. If you are young people, you are an adult, or you are an older person, you can always improve your life competencies, let's say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Arianna. I would just take a moment and say hi to some more of our guests. We have Arafat from Palestine, Ashot from Germany, and we have Munira from Tunis. Welcome. We're happy. And we also have Sarah from Tunisia. Welcome to you all. We're so happy that you've joined us. Post your questions, engage in the conversation. Now, I will move on to Olena, also following on from what Arianna has just described to us about the importance of this competence and developing it throughout life. But what other components are necessary to foster resilience within the education and training system? Olena.
Thank you, Denise. I'll just follow up from what Arianna was just saying. We are not proposing to focus on each key competence or its component separately, because sometimes when these new concepts are being put in practice, it could be thought that we should now add more hours of teaching, or we should add additional subjects in order to develop each competence or each of the components. But in fact, we are talking about the change of the way we interact with learners. And the main two emphasis that I would like to put here for discussion is that, first of all, the importance of who are the teachers, how they see themselves, and how they interact with the learner. And also, what is how do we blend the learning environments, and how do we put the learner in a situation of experiencing the competences, acting in the way that they would learn it by doing. And of course, coming back to the teacher, we see as teachers are citizens like us. They're also vulnerable. They have been put in display during the COVID lockdown in a terrible situation when they had to change the modality of their work, and very often feeling lost and lacking skills themselves to be up to stand up to the challenge. So it is important for the teachers to relax and to focus on developing themselves and showing their vulnerability. And this also helps to pass the resilience message to the learners, because we all are vulnerable, and the teachers could be showing by the example that this is what they've learned, this is how they changed the way they have been working, and this is how they reacted to stress. To me, the teachers and learners, their interaction has changed forever, and we should help both sides. And for teachers, we need to create supporting structures that they would be able to act as facilitators of the learning process guided and led by the learner. So this includes positive feedback, using assessment, formative assessment, as learning tool, not as measurement, rather helping to reflect on how progress is made on the development of achieving of personal goals. of the learners. And the second component here is, I think, trying to focus on experience, because the education system and lifelong learning should provide conditions for the learners to experience the kinds of actions, the kind of activities they will be engaged in the next phases of their life when going through different transitions. So to me, the key competences, including the small part of the LifeComp of personal, social, learning to learn key competence, but also entrepreneurial and digital and other key competences, they should be part of the design of upgrading the curricula and upgrading the teacher profiles, upgrading the teacher training, teacher professional development in the way that would build the learning outcomes for all these key competencies, including the resilience, into the canvas of the learning process.
Thank you, Olena. I have a question that came from the audience, and while you were speaking, and I'm just curious, do you think that resilience is recognized? You mentioned in your earlier response to the first question I posed to you that resilience has taken on greater momentum since 2015, also with the number of events, life events, which have taken place with the health pandemic, the green and the digital transitions. So you've just spoken about the importance of teacher resilience, about formative assessment in the education system. Do you think resilience is getting more recognition?
I think so. I think even the picture is quite scattered, of course. But I have to say, if I make a metaphor, that there is in software development, there's agile programming, and we are in agile programming mode. So we are preparing the tools. We are throwing them into the practice as we develop them. So there's no time to work on something properly, test it, and then it's like vaccines in a way. So just test it and already put in practice. And we have to learn how to do it. And I think we should not be afraid of testing and trying the new approaches. Yeah, that's I think our reality of life now.
Okay, thank you. Well, I will ask Peter now, also from his practical experience, the idea of fostering resilience. And I mean, are we rewarding these people who are being resilient? And what does it mean in different contexts? Is somebody who's resilient in one context, are they more appreciated than perhaps another context? What do you say, Peter, from your vast experience in many different countries?
Well, one of the things about resilience, for example, during this already short talk, it was mentioned to me that the website educrafter.com is down. So resilience of the technical systems around us is not always certain. Usually they work 99%. Or even 99.99%, but during a year there is then still that unknown or uncertainty. When will it fall down? And apparently during our talk, the databases of the hosting provider just died. No connection. Up again now, at least on my screens here in Finland. So we have built many different systems and institutions around us. So. And today we live in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and complex world. And those of us who are more resilient support those who are not. So this is how we built our societies, especially the kind of democratic social state, because we have made sure that those who otherwise would fall through the cracks are supported by our societies. And of course, that then requires resilience on an individual level. So you need to be resilient or have a resilient mindset to be able to build these kind of institutions together. And many tools for that
Okay, I will ask you a little more about the tools in a minute. I applaud you for your resilience, Peter, how you just take it in your stride that the website is down. And from what you've described about this, the personal, the social competence, and also this social democrat state, I think that way of being that supports those who perhaps are weaker, or we ourselves in moments of weakness. I think this will resonate. This resonates very strongly with the European socio-economic model, which is reflected in the LifeComp. Just before I go to Arianna and we return to the LifeComp and hear about more practical elements of the LifeComp project, perhaps, Peter, you would like to share with us some practical examples, some practices that you've used, some tools?
Well, one is breath. Very simple tool. Just stop, think, orient, and plan. And mindfulness practices we see are now, for example, coming to schools. So just stop in your current situation. You don't have to rush towards the first thing that is happening. There are we see more and more kind of entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship education coming into our systems, and then it gets a little bit more complex. But one of the things we really like to talk about is do, notice, reflect, and plan new action. So do for action. We're traditionally trained to be very good planners, so we don't need to start with that. Notice, observe yourself and observe others, so that you gather data to be able to reflect at the next stage. And then you analyze in the reflection, what have you done? What have you noticed? So you have data and information which you can base your plan on. And then you do this in iterative cycles. And these are very simple steps that you can use in your day-to-day life for almost anything.
Thank you, Peter. I like the stop. I like all the tools you mentioned, particularly the stop, think, orient, and plan, and the idea of mindfulness. Do you think this is something more of, let's say, our generation, let's say, that we are passing to young people? Because for them, everything's fast. They're always about reacting. I see even with my own children, so is this also a tool which you think it's something that we're passing to them, that we're helping them with? Do you think so? Do you think young people today need that more perhaps than we did, because their world is so reactive?
Their world, especially the digital world, is very, very reactive. This is of course true. But then when you really sit down and talk to young people, they also have this slow side to it. So they are not necessarily, I mean, yes, they live, many of them live a very public and fast life through digital media, but they also have this very, very slow side to them, very, very thoughtful, very informed, very engaged in issues. And we can see that from global activities. For example, in Germany, every Friday, literally every Friday, they demonstrate against the climate change and our actions. Every Friday. In Finland, this is kind of unheard of. We have other things we do. We engage a lot in NGOs, and this is young people from schools. So there are, I would say, both and. But of course, it's important for us, more mature human beings, to kind of remind them as well about these things.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And we can also, I agree with you, we can also learn from them in their thoughtfulness. Yes, thank you. I would say just hello to some more guests who've joined us. We have Azihu from Morocco. We have Anna from Bosnia-Herzegovina. We have Aryun from Nepal. Welcome. Andri from Poland and Ruta from Latvia. Welcome, all of you. We're so glad that you can join us. Please post your questions. We're happy to hear from you, whatever you would like to ask us. I will return to you, Arianna. And also the LifeComp project, which you mentioned earlier, but more generally, what is the European Commission doing to build resilience in the education system? Can you share with us some of your insider knowledge?
Yes, of course. Well, you know that following the principle of subsidiarity, member states are the one that have the competence to rule on education systems. While the European Commission can deliver recommendation guidelines, then each member state can decide how to adopt and adapt and implement. No? But I would say that to develop resilience in education, the European Commission is fostering competence-based education, since consider that it can keep citizens with better tools to face our times that, as Peter was saying, are increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, as the COVID-19 pandemics and the climate crisis is showing us. So the Joint Research Center, which is the research institute of the European Commission, started to work on the promotion of the key competence and competence-based education many years ago. As Olena said, we published the DigComp framework on digital competence. It was 2013. And EntreComp on entrepreneur competence in 2016, and now LifeComp on personal, social, and learning to learn key competence. I would say that foster digital competence, for example, is one of the main policy initiative in education. And practically, how GRC and is contributing to foster digital transformation and digital competence of students, but also teachers and school leaders. Well, we have launched 2 or 3 years ago a tool which is called Selfie Tool, which is a free-to-use and customizable tool to help school assess where they stand in their use of digital technology. Are the school making the most of digital technologies? This tool already helped more than 1.5 million users all over Europe, but also beyond Europe, to reflect on their use of digital technology and to create collectively, hearing the voice of student, teacher, and school leaders, a digital action plan to improve their use of digital tools, digital technologies. Also, we launched just some days ago a specific tool for teacher, which is called Selfie for Teacher, which help practitioners reflecting on their strengths and weaknesses related to digital skills, and also provide them some suggestion on how they could level up. I believe that you will be able to find the link to those tools in the chat. They are free and everybody can use it in Europe or beyond Europe. More specifically related to LifeComp competencies, we are trying to create some resources to help teacher and educator bridging the gap among the theory and the practice. For this, we are developing a short open online course, which will be for free again, and that help educators embedding those competencies in their teaching practice through practical teaching strategy. There are student-centered and that favor student activity around a topic. As Olena said, we are not promoting, let's say, that a new curricular topic named empathy. Okay, we are trying to promote a teaching strategy that create a learning environment in which students are called, are animated, are invited to put themselves in the shoes of others, and then to hone and develop their capacity to empathize. So this course is targeting educators and teachers. We'll have a workload of 10 hours, and will be hosted on the School Education Gateways. I think that also the link will be visible in the chat. It will start November the 22 and will end on the 6th of December. So we would like to invite everyone who is joining us from Morocco, Nepal, or from wherever to join the course and to take advantage of this course, which aim to explain in practice how to foster those competencies. And also on the LifeComp side, we are collaborating with teachers to develop some guidelines to teach LifeComp competencies, and we expect to launch those guidelines early next year. And finally, Denise, we know that as Olena said, key competencies are we in real life present themselves not as silos. We will blend competencies when we live and we learn and we teach. So we know that key competencies are all equally important. They are not silos, that they overlap, and there are points of complementarities among them. And we at GRC, we are promoting a research to identify teaching activity that are based on experiential learning again. So based on the activity of practical activity of the student, as Olena was saying, that foster competence belonging to different key competence framework. We expect to publish also next year this research bank of teaching activity, and among those teaching activity, practitioner could find, let's say, for example, an activity that requires creating value for others, which would be a principle of the entrepreneur competence, and they have to do it using some digital or to develop some digital content, and this would foster the digital competence, and they will have to do it collaborating with each other. So we will promote jointly competence belonging to entrepreneur key competence, digital key competence, and the personal, social, and learning to learn key competence.
Okay.
So this idea of blending and bundling the key competence from a bottom-up approach, starting from those teaching strategies. We as soon as we have some advancement on this work, we will share it with you at ETF, so that all the audience can be also informed about that.
Thank you very much, Arianna. You've provided us with a wealth of information, open resources, and we have shared all the links in our chat also for all our guests to participate if they wish to do so. I will say hello again to a few other guests that we have with us today. We have Adnan from Pakistan. We have Anan from the United States of America. We have Several from Turkey. Welcome. We also have a question in the chat from Sarah, which I would like to pose to Olena. Now, Sarah is asking us, do we see resilience as a quality that someone can learn or develop? And I would add to this, what if someone just thinks they're not resilient? I mean, they think that they're lacking in belief in their own resilience. What would you say to them, Olena?
This is such a great question, and I'm sure that Arianna and Peter would also have lots to do to this, to add to this, but I will start. Actually, coming back to a point that was raised a few minutes ago about the youth resilience, whether the youth is resilient or not these days. Let me give you an example. The young people grow these days already being more digitally resilient than the older generation. So they live in this environment. They have the devices from the very early days. So they are resilient to digital shocks in some way, not in all ways. Of course, there are issues of security, etc. But still, it's part of those cross-cutting competences that Arianna was mentioning, that all competences are like big bubble. They're all together. So we need to be seeing them from different perspectives. And digital competence requires resilience, some kind of resilience to be developed. And coming back to Sarah's question, of course, we stand on the position that yes, you can learn any key competence and all of them. And this is the big task of all who supports the learning process. And it's just a matter how can we learn or develop. Learning means learning by doing and also learning from the others. So exchanging practices, Peter was saying that we need to support each other. More resilient have to support the others. We had an interesting case of cooperation with JRC, with Arianna's colleagues about the production of the video series, Teacher Booster videos. They were our immediate joint response of different organizations to the challenge that the teachers were facing, because their resilience was put at test, and we tried to engage 7 successful educators and 1 learner. We filmed them, and they were telling their personal stories, how they were dealing with these challenges, how they overcame the shocks. And they were trying to explain that none of us is perfect. And this is what I learned. And this is how I failed. And this is what I did after. So I think very important ingredients of learning resilience is having somebody who helps, having supportive environments. We need to work with parents as well. We need to work with communities. We need to help the whole school staff to act as one organism, as ecosystem for developing, for helping learners to feel comfortable while learning to be resilient, and also other key competences. And of course, the small steps would be looking around. If you know that you can help the others, being kind and trying to help our children to grow as kind people. And this will help a lot. And additionally, I think we should try to develop more tools for teachers when they can engage learners in practical different exercises, different activities that would not be fictitious, that would not be really artificial, that learners would see that they are not from real life. But going outside, going into the real life and trying and testing and overcoming challenges together, supporting each other. That would be, to me, the main way forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Olena. I think you've answered very well Sarah's question. I would also say hi to Susanna from Macedonia, who's joined us. Before I move on to the final question, I see the time is passing quickly. Again, for you, Olena, because it concerns the work of the European Training Foundation. I mean, we heard from Arianna and from Peter about how resilience, it permeates so many aspects of our life, especially with the LifeComp. We've seen how the European Commission is working towards developing resilience in a personal development context, in a socio-cultural context, because we have the school environment, and indeed in the context of the learning economy, you know, for future work, to give learners the skills that they will need to enter the labor market. So, Olena, can you tell us, I mean, how is ETF cooperating with the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission, and how are we bringing that to our partner countries in the EU neighborhood?
In fact, this is a natural collaboration because we are working together around the common objectives and common interests, and since the research expertise that belongs to the domain of Joint Research Center is the basis on which the frameworks and the concepts of are developed that will be put in practice. We are working as ETF very closely to the partner countries, to the different stakeholders. We work with the governments in 29 countries, and we also work very closely with practitioners. So for us, the frameworks and the related tools that were developed after the launch of the frameworks were very important for testing and trying and engage in the expertise that exists in the partner countries to deal with their own demands. And this, for example, we contributed to the discussions around the conceptualizing of the framework. I am participating, I think I participated in all recent 4 framework development exercises with the JRC. And then when we go to the partner countries, we, for example, apply them to the development of new education standards or qualification standards. Currently, under the our project that you mentioned at the beginning, the Creating New Learning that I'm coordinating, we have different actions that support this interaction with the lots of practitioners in the partner countries. Then we have their feedback. We have the experience of testing the instruments. So we always bring it back into the conceptual discussions with JRC, with different DGs of the Commission that are engaged in the development of these new approaches and new tools. And for example, the mentioned Teacher Booster videos was a product of joint of collaboration with JRC. And for the next year, we're also preparing new tools, and I will not say which ones because we want first to put them in the open. And additionally, we will be also engaged jointly, again, with different colleagues from the Commission and with JRC in expert discussions through the community of innovative educators that we just launched recently at ETF. And also, we will be trying to also continue effectively working together in supporting innovative practices in teaching and learning. And it's both the practices which already have resulted in some interesting outcomes and those practices which are just starting. We are engaging with participatory research to look together with practitioners how, in particular, the key competences, but also personalized learning, the different learning environments, blending them, how this could be effectively put in order to develop the whole variety of key competences and including the resilience.
Thank you very much, Olena. I would also like to remind everyone that the various elements of the ETF initiative, Creating New Learning, the links are available in the chat for you to consult. So we're coming to the end of our chat, and I thank you all. It's been very informative, and I really hope our audience also feels the same. I would like to conclude by asking each of you, our guests, for, let's say, a word to someone who's wondering, a student, a teacher, a word of encouragement about developing the resilience. Maybe they don't feel so resilient. What would you say? Peter, where should they start?
Well, I always say we should start with dialogue. So listen actively, speak from the heart, wait for the others to speak, and respect everybody.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, Peter. Arianna?
Yes, I would say that owning their personal, social, and metacognitive or learning to learn competence will have as a consequence also an increasing of their resilience. So again, we were talking about if young people is resilient. I think that young generation had to face a very extraordinary moment in our history with the pandemics, and also doing it in a very extraordinary moment in the personal life of everyone, no? Which is the 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 youngest, the young age, the adolescents, and they have been able to keep up, to keep engaged, and they had to put a lot of effort on this, and I think that we should really acknowledge also the capacity of those young generation to link up, to stay connected, even through digital tools when, for example, we were all isolated. And I would like to celebrate, let's say, the capacity of resilience of young generation and students, and but also school system and teachers. I think that, for example, having improving our self knowledge, the capacity of being aware of our strength, and could help us, let's say, having a more benevolent idea on ourselves, and to be able to face challenges with a more positive mindset, let's say.
Thank you, Arianna. If I can say in another word, perhaps, I think it's those, if you think you're not resilient, you're wrong. You are, because throughout the recent times, it's required an enormous amount of resilience, but it's important to know thyself, to know that you've developed it and keep going. And with that, I will turn to Olena for the last word of this interview.
I'm watching the comments, and I'm very happy that we think the same with Sarah and Monia. And I would like to say two things to everybody, and then to learners and to teachers, one more word. So to everybody, I think we should really ask for help if we need it, and offer help if we can offer. I think this is our life has changed forever, and that's why we should act differently. So the world is now very open. There are no borders, and we can reach out for advice, for help, to exchange practices across the borders with any country, with any part of the world. And I think this is a very good thing that happened to us. When it goes about learners, I would say, first of all, we, again, due to the life that changed, we cannot learn everything. So for us, the task is to develop skills and develop attitudes. Since the key competencies, a blend of attitudes, skills, and knowledge. So knowledge, you need to know where to find it, and skills and attitudes should be developed. And for resilience, the skills and the attitudes are really important. This positive thinking and the accepting the reality and believing in yourself. And if you need help, asking for help. And the last thing for the teachers, I think the teachers, the modern era is also very interesting for teachers. Again, teachers don't need to demonstrate that they know everything. And then they now collaborate with teachers. They could be partners with other teachers and also with with learners. So networking, exchange of practices, asking yourself questions. And if there is a really big shock, remembering that we had the whole hour of discussion about resilience. So next time you experience a shock, you experience a hit, very important, very big stress, you just remember that we told you that everyone is resilient. So you're resilient. Denise, I agree with you. We're all resilient. And that means that you will bounce back. and you will be back to the shape as any material that we referred to at the beginning. You will be back in shape. A little bit of time will pass and we will be all fine. And if you observe anybody who is not yet there, there's always a way to help.
Thank you very much, Olena. I thank all the guests today. I thank our audience. I say a special hello to Mohammed, who from Afghanistan, who's joined us. I thank everyone for their contributions and for this the richness of this discussion. The interview will remain on our Facebook page of the European Training Foundation, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you all for listening and sharing with us this